Normally things go without a hitch. So, but I am noticing that it's my PowerPoint program that is being shared, not the actual PowerPoint screen. So let me get out of that real quick. I'm not going to mess around with that. So I'm just gonna do it this way. So anyway, so glad everybody could join us today for the open forum. I'm really excited. Thanks to Student Senate for giving me and our staff this opportunity to do this. Since I missed a little bit at the beginning, so I may have gone over, we actually have over the next 3 Mondays, a course of, or a series of events with student financial aid at LCCC on general financial aid information, because February, happy February 1st, everybody. February is Financial Aid Awareness Month. And so I'm really excited to be able to have this series. And since I'm doing a little bit of plugging, I'm just going to mention that we have another series going on with Student Senate in April for Financial Literacy Month. And again, it will be four different series or 4 different sessions in April as well. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm Carrie Stewart. I am your Director of Student Financial Aid. Do want to mention for any of you that, we're working on a rollout of name changes, but we have done some name changes over in the areas that have to deal with student financials. And so Financial Services was our past name. And, we had that bank of 6 windows on the first floor of the library. Where all 6 most of the 6 windows you can make payments and handle things with your student account. But there's actually been a division of duties, and I have a slide on that later on. But I just wanted to let you know in case you're wondering, like, well, haven't heard of student financial aid. All the same office, all the same people. We just have a more clear separation of those duties. So now we have 5 windows. The last window now belongs to student accounts, which was the bursar's office, and they're the ones now that exclusively only take payments. So, but I do have a slide later on as we get into that. So I'm taking a page from Sarah Hyde Pinner's book where, she kind of gets a little, we talk about who I am professionally, and then I also have a slide just so you guys can get to know me. I've been the director here since July of 2019. And it's been a wonderful start. The fall of 2019 just was so busy trying to get to know the college. And I don't have a community college background, so I had a lot to learn. And then, everybody knows a couple months later, the pandemic struck hard and then we closed down. So my first year at LCCC was not what you would call usual by any means. And now as I'm heading into my second year, it's also not very usual. But I do want to just tell you a little bit about my background professionally. I was at the University of Akron before I came here. I was there for just under 5 years, and I was an associate director there. I oversaw FAFSA processing. So any information that you might get from the financial aid office that says, hey, we need your selective service number or verification, that kind of details, as well as the entire verification process for the University of Akron within the financial aid office. And before that, I was at Baldwin-Wallace University for around 9 years. Actually started off as a financial counselor. Actually, I put this says assistant director, but when I left, I was an associate. But I started off as a financial aid counselor. And throughout my 9 years, I got promoted to assistant director. And then before I left, for a couple of years, I was an associate director there as well. I do have my master's degree in higher education administration and student personnel from Kent State University, but I'm originally from Pennsylvania, and my bachelor's degree is in communications. And I got that from Clarion University of Pennsylvania. And I had a good 14 years in between 14 years, I guess, give or take, between, no, not quite, 10 years between when I graduated with my bachelor's degree and before I decided to quit my job, give up my insurance and all of the things that came with that to come to Ohio for grad school. And I did that. So I just to kind of give you guys a little bit, you can see, especially for, students who are still trying to figure out their path, you can see I was on one heck of a different path. I was a communication major at Clarion, and my goal was to work in radio. And I did that. But at the same time, I had a part-time radio job. There's some things I didn't list on here. I did scheduling for an installation company, so like windows and things like that. It was Sears. But you can also see I did marketing for a heating, air conditioning, hardware store. Actually, they had a gun depot in there too. So that was kind of like a real jack of all trades. I did the marketing for them. I was a desktop publishing administrative assistant for a church. I did the programs every week. I did newsletters, a lot of the baptismal certificates, things like that. One of my very first jobs, and this one meant so much. You probably have never heard of a reading radio service, but I was a program director for this radio reading service in Pittsburgh. And basically it was a service went out over very specialized radios where we had people come in and read books, grocery ads, newspapers, and then on the receiving end of those, on these very special receivers, were folks that were blind or otherwise visually impaired. So that was a really fantastic experience. It was actually my first time managing people, and the two staff that I had were also blind. So that was a really eye-opening experience. Very, very rewarding, and very unique. You don't hear too much. You probably have never heard of a radio reading service, let alone, somebody who worked there. So, and then right before I started my path in financial aid, so right before I started work at BW, I was an admissions counselor down in Worcester for the Ohio State ATI campus. And then personally, this is just kind of a little, collage. I had fun putting this together. I'm married. That's my husband, Ben. We love to travel. This is a picture of this really cool park, and the name escapes me right now, up in New York. We were climbing all over rocks and things like that. The next picture where you see it kind of looks like a flag and there's all sorts of very caring words. That picture kind of serves two purposes. One, I made it with my Cricut. And so I'm kind of crafty. I like to be crafty. And so that kind of tells you about that. But also, all of those words are very, very important to me. So they all, I try to live by those and lead by example. I also love to bake. So you can see some double chocolate chip muffins right there in my oven. Made them a little too big. They're puffing over. Actually, I think those are chocolate pumpkin spice cupcakes that I made for Thanksgiving with a wonderful white chocolate buttercream frosting on top. That's very, very good. Then you see my black and gray tabby. That's May. She's my youngest kitty. LCCC is, as I'm going clockwise here, is now very much a part of who I am. And when we were, welcoming everybody back for the fall semester on Facebook, they had those cool frames and stuff. So, and I was wearing my LCC blue dress, so I felt very a lot of college pride there. Next, we have Jameson. He is my old man orange tabby. He's about 12. He has a whole host of medical issues. But he is the snuggliest love bug on the face of the planet. And then that last picture, some of the things I like to do in my spare time when we aren't traveling, which we're not doing a whole lot of, is just really enjoy the space that we have, our patio, and build little fires and s'mores. And I have a hammock out there, and it's fantastic. And I can't wait till the weather warms up to be able to get back to that. So that's me, kind of in a nutshell. And in the fall, I do want to mention that one of the very first things I got to do when I came to the college was take a trip to Texas to do the Real College conference. And Zarai was actually the only student that went on that trip. So, she actually holds a really special place in my heart because she was one of the first students that I really, really got to know. And so I love that she's still here, and I love that we have this new kind of partnership and working relationship. It's just been really neat to see her blossom because, like I said, I haven't really had a usual experience where I get to work with many students because of everything that's going on. So I'm going to just kind of monitor the chat, but until, I don't know if anybody has questions to this point. I mean, my history is kind of varied, so I don't know. Do you want to talk about that at all? I'm here for you. I know there aren't a ton of students here. Janet, I think you were the only non-student Senate person here, so just let me know. Like I said, I do have a couple prepared slides, just in case, just to help get the conversation going. Some points that a very dear friend of mine asked me to make when I had this audience with students. So
Of course.
I can just continue on with that, or we can, open it up at this point.
I want to chime in on a few things. I also have a list prepared with different questions. They might overlap with ones you already have, but we can go over that. I just wanted to mention I love your cats. I'm a cat person myself, even though I can't have one at the moment. But I'm very glad that you brought up the real college because I remember that's when I met you. And it was a very, very fun experience, and I'm glad I was able to go. Now with COVID, I'm like, oh wow, I got to go to 2 conferences before this and get that experience. So I just wanted to comment on that, but we can continue forward with your prepared questions and slides.
Why don't we do your questions first?
Okay.
Because if mine hit it, then they'll just help reinforce some of the answers that I give.
Okay. Cool. I have them right here. So you've answered this one, which is what and where AC Student Financial Aid Office, and you covered that it was previously known as just financial aid. What can student financial aid help students with is what I would begin with.
Okay. I'm just gonna pull this up just because there are some visuals that will help with that. Unless I didn't save it. There it is. Okay. So, like I said, this will just help provide some background, but and I feel like it's good to come from a point of what the difference is between the two offices that do deal with financials for students. So in the financial aid office, I always like to say that we are a bridge. That means that we don't really ever have the money in our office, but we help students find the resources, whether it comes from filling out the FAFSA, which we'll touch on, or maybe there are other resources at the college through the foundation or through other scholarships that are set up, or maybe it's somebody's bowling league or something like that. We help get the money from those resources over this little bridge to the student accounts office, which is the office that sends the bills, collects the money, makes sure that you pay so that you can register forward. So that's a really big distinction. And it happens at every college that I've been at. Okay, the 3 colleges that I've been at so far, which is, financial aid, they're the ones that have a hold on my account, or they're the ones I call with bills and things like that. Not so much. We can help you pay the bill. So if you don't have cash or credit, we can help find funding. And the main thing that we do with that is the FAFSA, which probably everybody knows, and we're going to have next week's session, I believe, is on FAFSA 101. So we're going to talk about that at length. But the FAFSA is the financial aid application. It opens up every year. Got a slide on important reminders for that. It serves so many purposes. And something that I noticed when I got to LCCC is that people view, and it's perfectly okay for that, but I want to try to open up minds, is people view the FAFSA as I'm either getting a Pell Grant or I'm not getting a Pell Grant. But it's not just about the Pell Grant. Yes, the Pell Grant program is huge, especially at LCCC. It's a huge program. And yes, you do have to fill out a FAFSA to get it, but the FAFSA actually leads to a number of other different things. And we'll touch on that. So the FAFSA is an application. When I give my presentations at high school to parents about filling out the FAFSA, I say that it's kind of like a root canal. Now, if you've never had a root canal, you might think, oh my God, that sounds extremely painful. But the actual root canal isn't so bad. They give you shots, they make you feel, sometimes you get some other things that just kind of take away the pain, which is what brought you there in the first place. So the root canal itself isn't the problem. The FAFSA itself isn't the problem. It's that anticipation, all of the bad things that you've heard about it. And the root canal, it's the actual pain, throbbing of your tooth that makes you get there. But for the FAFSA, it's really that anticipation. So what we like to do in the financial aid office is just be there as a guide to help students who have that fear, and their parents really, to complete it. So we can do that even now that the college isn't completely wide open, but we do have, we're in a phase right now where our office hours are 10 to 6 Monday through Thursday, And we do have a bank of computers that, we space people out at, and we have staff on hand to help students and their parents fill out the FAFSA. But we can also answer some questions over the phone. I've known at least one or two staff members to kind of do like appointments over the phone. We could certainly do it via WebEx if anybody was interested in that. Might have to do some training with my staff to learn how to use WebEx. But Krista's on here. She's super techie. I know that would be something right up her alley. We also have a live chat, and so we get a lot of questions that way. But we have just a lot of resources for filling out the FAFSA. But we're not all about the FAFSA completion to begin with, or just only. The FAFSA, once you complete it, you kind of get dropped into these little buckets. Some students are required to submit extra information, and that can be a huge barrier nationwide. It's just not something that happens here at the college. And the biggest one, I told you, this is what I was literally in charge of all of the verification for the University of Akron, but verification can be kind of tricky. It can also be scary and make people feel like they did something wrong. Verification definitely gets a bad rap, but the verification process, just to give you an idea of what that is it's a process by which we at the school, and this is, if you get selected for verification, you got to do it at LCCC, or if you're transferring to OSU, you got to do it there too. It's the same no matter where you go. But it is the process by which we collect documents to verify that the information you reported on the FAFSA is correct. We don't do much selecting at the college level. It's all the federal government that once they process a FAFSA, they tell us who needs to be selected for this process. And then based on information that's reported on the FAFSA, we send out emails that say, hey, the FAFSA has been selected for verification. We need to collect some documents from you in order to finish processing your FAFSA and then get you on the path to receiving a Pell Grant or, other financial aid, which I promise I will get to. And it's not just verifications. Some students need to, I mentioned selective service. So some students need to turn in that documentation. Some students need to turn in citizenship documentation, all sorts of things like that. But it's all wrapped up in this FAFSA processing process. Definitely we'll get, that is a whole presentation series in itself, all of the things that might come up with, the FAFSA and verification, things like that. But the FAFSA is really just one small part of what we do. We're also responsible for ensuring that the financial aid that we award to students, that students are eligible for it, that they maintain their eligibility. So that comes with things like satisfactory academic progress, which is a series of standards by which students need to follow to prove that they're on a path for, academic progress. Because in the easiest of terms, that, especially when the federal government's giving out their federal dollars, they're not going to just keep shelling out all of this money without seeing the results. They want you to graduate. They want to see students continue and finish and move on and be out of school and be participating in society, being part of their community. So there are these types of things that are built in to kind of keep students on their path. So satisfactory academic progress is one of those, and that entails things like GPA, the amount of credits that you, or the amount of classes that you enroll in and finish, but really it's the ones that you don't finish. So, too much withdrawing and things like that can harm that. And then just making sure that you're staying on progress in something that's called a maximum time frame, which we'll get into that later. Lots of information on the website. I don't want to take up too much time with that. We also, our office handles all of the scholarships at the college, almost all of the scholarships. There's a couple that come in from outside sources and things like that, but we do have a, full-time scholarship coordinator who manages that entire process alone. So, the big scholarships, we call them the big three because they are some of our biggest scholarship programs: Presidential, Trustee, Diversity Incentive Award. But then from the foundation, through the LCCC Foundation, there are probably not countless, I'm sure it's counted, but there are hundreds of scholarships available through the foundation. And students go out and fill out those applications, and they all come back to this one person in our office who makes heads or tails of them, and then gets together with the scholarship review committee to assign those. And it's not just scholarships for LCCC students that are looking to graduate from LCC. It's also UP scholarships. So there's a whole nother realm of scholarships there too. And then, we kind of do a little bit of this and that, but it's all pretty much related around those big things: getting financial aid, maintaining the financial aid, and then helping, students. If you can see that first, I think I still have it pulled up, the first bullet there. If you've got a bill and you're not planning on paying it out of pocket, we help you find those resources. Maybe it's filling out a FAFSA. Maybe you already filled out a FAFSA, and the Pell Grant doesn't cover everything, so maybe you need a student loan, or maybe we can match you up with a scholarship. Those are things that we do. The second bullet there, want to apply for financial aid, we can help with that. And then that last one kind of covers all of that maintaining, like a financial aid didn't apply, so why? Maybe it's SAP, maybe it's on plan, which I have a slide on. And then the student accounts office, just to kind of round out this slide, so then we can move past it and get to the other ones too. Student accounts, that's the office that you go to. Used to be bursars. Now the college still does have a bursar, but he's just one guy. He's brand new, by the way. His name's Jim Wilson. Fantastic man. We're so lucky to have him as part of the LCC team, and he's very excited to be here. He started at the beginning of the month. But the office overall, really, they deal with student account information. So they renamed themselves to student accounts. Makes sense, right? We were financial services, but really we did financial aid. People called us financial aid anyway, so why not just make us officially student financial aid? So we've got student financial aid, student accounts. So the student accounts office, that's where you go to find out how much your bill is. You want to make a payment. Maybe you're not sure how your charges were calculated. Maybe you want to pay the bill using cash or a check or credit card. Right now, what's going on is they're processing, or they did, 1098-T statements. So if you file your own taxes, that's something that you want. We don't have that here in financial aid. Remember, we're just the bridge. Just keep that in mind. We're the bridge. Helps money get from point A to point B. Anything that actually has to do with your money is all with student accounts. So 1098-T statements, by the way, you can get those through my campus. They were available, I believe, starting Friday. But you, or if you file your own taxes, or your parents, if they are using you on their taxes, need that 1098-T statement. And then I just put something there at the bottom. You can learn a lot by viewing the Student Center in my campus. And so I really recommend, if anybody hasn't done it, click around. You may be surprised at all of the different things you can learn about. I mean, sometimes I feel like I still find things that I didn't know were available out there, and I have a different way to, my view isn't the same as students. So definitely click around. There's a ton of different stuff, different things that you can find out. So that answers your first question, Zarai. It was a loaded one, but I wanted to be thorough.
It's all right. It is all right. We got time so might as well use it. So, as you said, you did change your name from financial services to financial aid. So, the next question is very basic. What is financial aid?
Sure. So, financial aid is as a noun, it is any type of funding that comes from anybody who isn't you to help pay for college tuition. So we have a couple different categories of financial aid. We have the most popular one are grants. And I'm going to separate them out from scholarships, but grants are free money. They usually are named grants because they require something like a FAFSA, and they require something else like financial need. So a student fills out the FAFSA using all their financial aid information, or financial information, their parents, if they put parents on the FAFSA, tax information, household size, all of those different things. And the government has they call it a federal methodology. They go process it behind the scenes, and then they say, boom, here's an index number. Use this index number. Schools use the index number to figure out how much need there is. So one of the largest forms of one of the largest grants that exists is the Pell Grant, but it is need-based. So I said earlier, some students think that, oh, I'm not going to get a Pell Grant, so don't fill out the FAFSA. But like I said, it's just one tiny part of, not tiny, it's huge. It's just one type of financial aid. So the Pell Grant's the largest. There are some grants from the state, but since we're a community college, they kind of work those a little bit different because community college attendance, or the cost of attendance, the cost to attend is so much lower. So there are grants that, you know, students may get at a private or public school that we don't necessarily offer here. One of them is just called the Ohio College Opportunity Grant. And usually only veterans in certain situations would be eligible for it here. And that's a state grant. There is actually one more federal grant program. It's called the Supplemental Educational Opportunity Grant, SEOG. And what's different about SEOG than Pell is that Pell is what's considered an entitlement. As long as you have the right index number that we talked about, and you're enrolled and you meet all of the other eligibility criteria, which there's a lot, so I might not want to go in on that today, then you get the Pell Grant. It's literally an entitlement. You are entitled to that Pell Grant. SEOG, on the other hand, the Department of Education, the U.S. Department of Education, gives us a pot of money, and they say, as long as you're awarding it to the neediest students at your campus, you decide how much and how it gets distributed. So some students may get an SEOG the first year at LCCC, and then they don't fill out their FAFSA until much later, and so they might not get it the second year. Or you know, a student can get it at LCCC and not get it if they were applying to the University of Akron, because it's all based on timing. First of all, it's usually one of those first come first serve awards, and also every school has its own policy, you know, on how to award that. Like our awards are 800. I know COTC, I believe theirs are 600. So it just could all depend. So you've got those state federal grants. State grants, we don't see a ton of them at LCCC, again, because the state, you know, is focusing, since we don't have a large cost of attendance, they don't want to really be refunding a lot of those funds. That's their words, not mine. But they have other grant programs like through the National Guard and things like that. Then we have scholarships, which are also free money. And free money basically just means it doesn't have to be repaid under most circumstances. But scholarships are different because most of the time they don't require a FAFSA. They don't require a student to show that they have any kind of financial need in order to receive. They're usually based on merit or talent or something like that. And the scholarship can come from any source. So we do get some scholarships from the state of Ohio, the Ohio War Orphan Scholarship. There's also a scholarship for there's a fire safety officer scholarship. But at the college level, so institutional scholarships, we have, I mentioned the presidential, the trustees, the DIA, and then we have all of those foundation scholarships as well. And so, you know, sometimes they are very specific, like you have to be, you know, a red-headed Scottish woman from the county of Medina, whatever, you know, like some of them have very specific requirements and some of them don't. You know, one of our largest foundation scholarship programs is the non-traditional scholarship, and it just requires that, you know, students are non-traditional, and here that's, they have to be an independent student, they have to be over a certain age, and things like that. So those are your free money scholarships. Oh, by the way, scholarships don't even just have to be from the institution. They can also be from, I mentioned like a bowling league or the Kiwanis Club, or gosh, when I was at BW, we had a student win Oprah's scholarship. That was $10,000 a year. It's fantastic. But they can be from any, you know, any company, anything. You know, Sally Mae is a lender. They just sent me something on scholarship programs that they have. So I'm going to review that and post that on our website, which I do have within this presentation. Then we have, you know, we get into the second category of aid. So I said that there are multiple different types, but we have, you know, a couple categories. We have the free money. So those are your grants and your scholarships. And then we have financial aid that's considered self-help. And that just means it's kind of like a something for something. So one of the types of self-help aid are student loans. And so student loans actually get a really bad rap. But if students need help to finance their education, and as long as they're making decisions wisely, and we can help make sure that students make those decisions wisely, student loans are a great way to finance an education, to finish the degree or program and get out and enter the workforce.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Can I just ask a question, real quick question,
Yeah.
going back to the scholarships? Would you
Yeah.
say that there are at the end of the year, that there's like a ton of scholarships available that people just did not take advantage of?
No, because we have a scholarship committee, and we review those throughout the year and try not to let that happen. So we actually just had a meeting on Wednesday where the foundation reviewed all of the scholarships, let us know where there were funds still to be spent. And this actually, Janet, I'm so glad you asked this, because I have a slide on this later on. This is another reason to fill out a FAFSA, because if we have your information, we do, and this is Val's specialty, we can create all sorts of queries, and then we go searching for students who meet those criteria, because we want to spend the money.
Really?
And the people who the people who donate these funds, or maybe they're their ancestors, because some of the funds we've had, have really been at the college for a long time, but they don't want to see us not spend this money. They donated this money. They created these scholarships to help students. So they want us to see how that, they want to know that we're actually spending it. So no, to answer your question, by the end of the year, it's all gone. But we keep tabs on that.
So some of my understanding is that sometimes there's only one person applying for these scholarships.
Sometimes there's no people applying for them. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
The reason why I'm asking.
Go ahead.
The reason why I'm asking is because Zerai, I actually interviewed her. I do podcasting on through the college, and she was one of my interviewees, and I was just so pleased to hear that you have a radio background, which I think is really, really cool. But I'm going to be doing another podcast soon, and I really, really want to highlight. That's one of the reasons why I'm here. You're probably wondering, why is this woman in this?
I'm just glad they're here. I will teach anybody. I did open it up to staff because I just want everybody to come.
Yeah. Anyway, I am really committed to helping students complete a degree debt free, and because you probably know this, that students are very, very hesitant to take out loans, because they hear the war stories of students that complete a degree and they have all this debt at the end of it. And so anyway, I'm glad that you guys are proactively reaching out to students, regarding these scholarships, and that they are filled by the end of the year. I'm so pleased to hear that.
Yeah. And so this kind of gets a little bit away from, but I really want to talk about this for a second. So when I was getting interviewed by Dr. Ballinger, one of the things she asked me was about financial literacy, and if there was a way to really kind of encapsulate what financial literacy passion is on a slide, I totally would have put that about me personally, because it's really, really important to me, and because I see so many misconceptions here at our college. I really wanted to kind of hit the ground running with trying to think of how to develop, a financial literacy program. Things got delayed. What's actually funny is in January of 2020, I'm sitting in Marissa Vernon White's office, and I'm like, these are my ideas. And she's like, yeah, we're going to run with this. And then, hell breaks loose. So, but, gotten a chance to catch our breath. And, I put some more things on paper, and I'm working with Allison Musser out of the marketing office. And what we're going to do, and I think I mentioned this to Zerai too, when we were having kind of like our one-on-one to figure out these series, is we're going to create like a financial wellness I don't want to say campaign, but we're going to have a tagline, we're going to have a logo, and I'm using financial wellness instead of financial literacy, because financial wellness includes so much more. Long story, but there's so much more to it than just like when you hear financial literacy, you think, okay, budgeting and how to create this and how to create that. But I sat in on a couple financial literacy presentations. I did even one at a different community college, and I didn't feel like it. I felt like it was really out of touch with what our students are experiencing, especially right now. I'm not going to tell you how to build a budget, because right now you're probably, not you. I'm just saying there are students out there that that
They don't have
can't even fathom thinking about putting $5 a week away in a savings account. So financial wellness, some of the ideas that I talked about were, actually, this was in a different meeting, but I know Zerai was there. I can picture her little face in the screen. Or maybe she wasn't, but just kind of fun things like how to do, I don't want to say cheat meals, but how to do, a crock pot meal for a week, and, how to freeze, just things that are fun, that don't really point out that, okay, we have students that are seriously struggling, and struggling, I mean, now with a pandemic, even more than ever before, but we had students that were struggling before the pandemic, even struck. So we're working out this whole little, I don't want to call it, kind of like a sub department of financial wellness that will have a lot of team players. Like the ARC does a lot of stuff with financial literacy, so we want to pull them in. I worked with the folks that are doing the SDev class, presentations. I got a brand new, financial wellness presentation for them. But there's some other things you said there, Janet, that really moved me. And we're just doing other things at our level in our office to kind of keep keep borrowing low. What students don't realize. I mean, actually, I do want to touch base on, right now you hear all of the horror stories about student debt. Mm-hmm. And a lot of them are absolutely horrible. However, there are students who borrow a little bit of funds, use it specifically for what it's worth, graduate, enter the workforce, and repay that. So, there's another study out there, and I can't remember, all of the details, but there are, student loans aren't the devil. They are not the end all be all. They are not terrible. For some students, it's the only way to do certain things. It's the only way to accomplish that. What we encourage is smart borrowing. And right now, I've seen some things. I'm not sure that we have some students that are thinking that through because of the way that we process loans. We process loans, the maximum that you want, you get. And that's, I don't think that is, I know why the college does it. And, there's a lot of conversations about, policies and how to make those arrangements. But, we really want the students to be educated in that. And it's just probably not something that we've ever really gotten to as an office. So it's on my very important list as we move through things. Of course, I want all students to be able to graduate debt free, but it's not a reality for some. Mm-hmm. Some will need to, to borrow, but I would like for that to be last resort. We've got programs like Ohio Means Jobs, and we've got these scholarships, and you've got all of these things going around. So I'm totally with you.
I know. I think that a lot of students that they immediately go to, the loan thing because it's the path of least resistance. But there's just so many other areas that they can go. And I know that financial aid has, really kind of in the past really encouraged students to do that. There's so many, just the SAIL program alone, right?
Oh yeah.
It's hard. That is something that has been really, really positive for students. So really highlighting those things before, really look, I agree that sometimes the loan is, a way forward, but I just think that a lot of students don't make the effort that it takes to look at those other options first.
Yeah. And hopefully, that's something that we can start, really doing that education process.
I mean, honestly, some students, they don't even realize, I mean, I'm sure you're totally aware of this, but they don't even know the difference between that what they're signing is a loan. They think it's a grant.
And I can tell you some horror stories.
Yeah.
From previous experiences. Yeah. Yeah, I could.
So there's just, but anyway, that's what I'm going to be working on this semester is I'm working with a radio station, and I don't know if you know Dee Gross, but she's with the radio station Boom Radio on campus. And we're working on I'm doing a podcast that's called, actually, you're probably not going to like this title, but I'm wondering if students will, and I'd be interested, Sahar, in knowing if you would, what you think of the title of my podcast is The No Loan Zone, Complete a Degree, debt free. And in it, I really want to explore all those different other avenues you can take before you sign on the dotted line for a loan.
Absolutely. I just wanted to jump in real quick and thank you. Honestly, I think I like that title for your podcast, honestly. It sounds catchy and straight to the point. And I also wanted to jump on the comment that you said that students just go straight to the loan and don't realize that it's a loan. A lot of that is because I can speak on behalf of the Hispanic and Latin community. Um, I'm I think I'm the only person in my family who doesn't have a student loan right now, that they're still paying off. And growing up, that's all I knew. All I could ever hear about college, the word student loan was always in there. So that was the only that was the only form of paying for college that I was aware of, that I knew, because when my sisters went to college, my brothers went to college, that was all that existed at that time. The scholarships were really hard to come by if they weren't for athletic purposes. So coming from that background, it wasn't until I'm like, there's gotta be a way around this. I don't want to take out a loan whatsoever. I don't want that burden on me or my family. And that's when I started digging around, asking questions. And when I came upon them, I'm a very analytical person, so I figured out how to fill out the applications and things. But in conversation with students that I've met and students that I'm friends with, when they do find these scholarships, they don't know the vocabulary. They don't know exactly how to express themselves in a way that's appropriate for the application. Um, and they just don't know where to turn to, because they know that the college has the academic tutoring center, but they can't help you with scholarship applications. They can only help you with essays for your classes, and research papers. Everything else, it's really unclear on where you can go. And although Career Services has explained to me that they can also help with those things, it's just not known. It's not advertised that way.
What
So
made the
that
big difference for you, Sarai?
for
What made the
me,
big difference for you? Yeah.
in regarding my adventure in looking for the scholarships and things,
Yeah. Yeah.
um what made a difference was when I was told multiple times that you don't need to meet all of the requirements. Just because if you fit most, like all but one, it's okay to still apply. That you don't need to meet all of the requirements in order to apply, because then I learned that you will still be considered.
And who
Especially
told you
if
that?
I actually don't remember. I've had different student work positions on campus, so I've heard many people talk. I don't know if it was through my um, student position at enrollment services or if it was after I transitioned to career services. I just know that in between there, I heard conversations and I heard people talk, and I'm like, oh, I didn't know that. But working as a student worker on campus really, really and truly opened my eyes and broadened my view on a lot of things.
Yeah, that's cool.
Regarding student experience on campus. Without my student work experience, I don't think I would know half the stuff that I do. Um, but that's what made the difference, knowing that I don't have to meet all of the requirements and that I will still be considered for the application. And also, what also made a difference was to apply. You don't have to apply to just one. If you meet the requirements of several scholarships, apply to those too. You don't know. You never know. There's no limit into how many you can apply for. And getting that, having that information and really having that sink in really was beneficial to me.
So
And
let me talk maybe talk to that point. I mean, a lot of the scholarships have requirements that do need to be met. We do have some scholarships that have been in place at the college for so long that that maybe programs have changed, and the foundation can't reach the benefactors, or they can't be adjusted to meet that. It's a very serious business. Like if I were to set up a very specific scholarship program, and then 100 years from now, okay, the college hasn't been around that long, but still, let me think of a different way to rephrase this. What the foundation is trying to do right now is when benefactors are approaching them, when donors are approaching them, they're trying to, as much they can, encourage an open scholarship, where it doesn't go into these little niches that require, that have all of these different criteria. So Zerai, I would definitely not put, I wouldn't, as a financial aid office, I wouldn't put out there that you don't have to meet the requirement. But maybe what happened is that there were probably a lot of things that happened behind the scenes. If you happen to get a scholarship where you didn't meet those requirements, it could be that you were the only one that applied. And this goes to any student. Only one student applied. What happens for that scholarship committee is Sarah, who does the scholarships in my office, she would say, okay, this is where Zerai checks off these boxes, but she doesn't check off these boxes. The foundation goes back to the donor if they can and say, okay, listen, this is where we're at. We haven't had any applicants, for that check off all of your boxes, but we have this one. And then the donor will either say yay or nay, and then back. So it's not, so I don't want it to think, and Janet, especially when you're thinking about podcasts, we need to make sure that we're not saying that, okay, well, the rules that are there aren't really rules. It's not that simple, but yes, I encourage, apply for everything. Apply for as much as you can. And this is something else that's being in the works, with the IS&S department. But again, the pandemic kind of pushed a lot of really excellent plans off. But there is, instead of like right now, if you were to go out, and I have some slides here too of the links for the scholarship applications. If you go out there right now, it's just a page, and you can look at different categories, based on major or even just general. And in order to apply for it, you got to click on it and then fill out the PDF. Sometimes you have to print it, which again, we're in a pandemic, all of these things. It's not easy. But my first December here, we were on the verge. We were this close to making it a standalone application, a standalone website, where it was going to be so much easier. And so it's still in the works, where it kind of matches you up. You can put in nursing, and then all of the scholarships that, are available for nursing comes up.
Oh, that's so cool.
It really, really is. And, all of these things take time, but I just needed to state that I didn't want, especially since this is being recorded, I didn't want anybody to think that, oh, you need to have an inside track in order to learn these things about these scholarships. It's not that at all. Zora, you just happen to be very lucky, and you have a ton of people, and I wish this for all students, have a ton of people who look out for you. There are just some of these scholarships that exist that have just kind of aged out of what LCCC offers. And if you can't reach the donor because family passed away or whatever, then it becomes very difficult to change those criteria, because donating money to a foundation is serious business. It's and in a foundation office, you don't want to irritate anybody, or you don't want word to get out on the streets that you're not really meeting all of their criteria. So it's kind of like a back and forth. And I'm so glad, Zerai, that you had that experience. And I definitely wouldn't tell, any other students on this call to not apply for things, but it's not like you have to be a nursing major and, I'm engineering, so I'm going to apply for this scholarship.
Yeah.
It doesn't work like that.
That wasn't where I was going with that. The way I mentioned it was that at least the generic requirements on scholarships is the GPA point average. And even if it's literally just 1 point, like one number down,
Yeah.
That can be discouraging for the student. Like, oh, I don't meet the grade point average. So like, should I still apply? So that was where what I was thinking
And
about.
that's
Yeah,
perfect.
meeting the
Yeah.
requirement is a very important and cannot be played with, of course. But
Yeah.
the only one that
And
I wanted
so
to touch on was the grade point average. If you don't meet it
that's
exactly.
that is perfect because the true intention of the scholarship it usually revolves more around major or some kind of background, but it can usually be some leeway on that. But again, it's not as easy as Sarah in my office just being like, oh, okay, chink. It needs to go off and then it needs to go off. And sometimes that is a process in itself. So obviously we want students to meet those requirements. But on the other hand, like I said, when donors, provide to, when I don't know what it's called, but that would be an interesting conversation.
It needs to be right.
Zari, that would be, I think it would be a wonderful idea for Student Senate someday to speak with Lisa Brown, the executive director of the foundation. You could probably learn a ton of different things. But yeah, so it's just, there are just certain things that you just really need to cater to the donors because usually they have very, very specific, ideas in mind. But that could be a fun one. I'd attend that one. I think that would be really fun to learn about that.
Yes, it is one. So we can continue on with a couple of questions.
Yeah.
I do want to go. You did mention you have a slide with the links, with different links. So
yeah. Do you want to? Let's just go through the slide and then see what questions we have at the end. Just because. Okay. So obviously we know what the goals are. We talked about this one. So let's talk about on plan. So remember how I said that the federal government really wants to watch how we spend their money, and the goal is not to be misers about it, but to really help students complete a program and finish and go out and enter the workplace or go on to more education or whatever the case may be. That's why the college implemented this program called On Plan. Financial aid's limited, and it only applies to classes that count towards the degree or program. So here's some tips on how to stay on plan. And this is one my very, very dear friend, Jason Gibson, asked, like, how do we need to have a campaign about how to remind students to make sure that their majors are correct? Because one of the biggest problems, if you look at the third bullet here, it says, react quickly if you receive a notice from us about being off plan. One of the biggest problems is the student changed their major, but it's not changed in the system. So I don't know enough about the academic advising process to know, did the student not say to the advisor, oh, I want to officially change my major or what happened there? But the biggest from his observation was that students, and even the small experience that I've had working with advisors, I'm like, oh, hey, can you reach out to students off plan? And they're like, oh, but their major is X. Well, that's not what the system says. Oh, we need to get that updated. Well, my goal is to get everybody to make sure that their major is updated, and you can see that. That's one of those things that you can see in the Student Center, so that you don't have to get that annoying message from us saying, hey, your classes are off plan. What I'm trying to do is just, and this goes with the scholarships, Janet and Zari, like my goal for our office, and this is not something that's going to be easily accomplished because students do roll over. We get new students all the time. But I really want students to be aware of all of this stuff so that we aren't contacting them for all of these things. And then we can put more efforts into financial wellness programs and things like that. So one of the very first thing is just make sure that the degree is correct, that your degree or program is correct, and your academic advisor can help with that. The other thing, and this is one of the reasons why students are encouraged to work with sometimes required to work with their academic advisor to schedule classes, is because the academic advisors know which classes are supposed to be on plan. And they know which ones are not going to be on plan. So what happens if classes are off plan? You can't get paid financial aid for that. So Zari, let's say that you had 12 credits, you're enrolled in 12 credits, but only 6 of them are on plan. Only 6 of them meet the established criteria of classes that are required for your degree. And let's say that you're eligible for a Pell Grant. I'm not sharing any information. I'm speaking very generally. if that was the case, Zarai's only going to get Pell Grant for 6 credits, which is half of the amount she would get if all 12 credits were on plan. So it's not just, I can't get any financial aid if my classes are off plan. You might be missing out on financial aid if your classes are off plan. You could be getting a little bit, but maybe you could get a whole lot more. And again, the purpose is to keep you on a plan towards program completion. So it's been around for a while. Actually, it was here before I got here, and it was, and just to be honest, there's a lot of, it's now called CPOS, and a lot of other schools are just now starting to deal with it. It's, course program of study, and we are light years. I mean, LCCC is light years ahead on a lot of things, but this is definitely one of them. Other schools right now are having all sorts of issues trying to figure out how to implement this. And so I'm kind of glad I wasn't here to see it being implemented, and I just get to work with the out product and see how awesome it is. But it really is a great program. And, it also helps towards that, that goal that the college has, of 10,000 degrees by 2025. This just helps. We're just trying to keep people on their path. And if you think about it, it's kind of the exact opposite. If colleges were for-profit institutions, you think we'd want to keep them as long as we can. We don't. No college wants to do that. We want you to get in and get out. Not because we don't love you, but because we've got more people to train, and we want to see you go off and become our peers and be a part of our community and all that happy stuff. Any questions about on plan?
Nope, you may proceed.
Okay. Make sure your contact information is correct in the student center. And you think, okay, well, why is, student financial aid including that as part of their presentation? Well, for a lot of different reasons. Checks are mailed. So the student accounts office, remember, they're the ones that you pay the bill to. If the bill's already paid because of financial aid and there's some money left over, some of you may be familiar with a process where you get a refund check. Now you can use that for other, you can use it for living expenses or, books, supplies, any other, educational related expenses. But right now the college is not using direct deposit. That's going to come someday. But right now, student accounts sends those checks via mail. And what happens if you change your address, 3 times and they can't send you that check? Well, then the check comes back. The check has to get canceled, voided, then it has to get reprocessed, then it has to get mailed out to you again, or it doesn't because we don't know where you live. So it's really, really important to keep your information up to date. And then, in the green here, lots of departments have reasons to contact students. For us, if we can't get a hold of you, maybe we have just one quick question for your verification and we just need you to pick up the phone. But your voicemail's full, or you didn't set up your voicemail, or you don't have a cell phone listed and there's no phone number listed, or it's bad. We can't reach you that way. We'll email, but how many emails do you get? I mean, I know I get a ton of emails. So email, for today's student is kind of not the best way to contact. So we'd love to be able to call and reach out, but sometimes we can't. And that gets really frustrating. And believe it or not, when you call and leave a message somewhere, make sure that you leave your phone number. You would probably not believe how many messages we get where the student leaves, their name and what they're calling for and say, okay, call me back. No phone number, no student ID. So we're just like, if your name is Joe Smith, we're kind of in a pickle. We don't really have a great way to get a hold of you. So anyway, lots of really good reasons to make sure that your information is correct. I suggest that everybody checks that at least once a semester. Because if you get into a habit, you don't move that often, but, if you're checking it once a semester, that's kind of your, motivation to get that checked. File the FAFSA every year. I talked about, I kind of teased this slide a little bit. It is available every October. The earlier you file it, the better, because some financial aid, like that SEOG grant I mentioned, is limited or awarded on a first come, first served basis. Certain scholarships require the FAFSA as an application. Sometimes because some of them are need-based, sometimes because some of them only apply once any Pell Grant funds are applied. Doesn't mean you have to be eligible for a Pell Grant. It just means, they're going to see what the government is going to pay in order to kind of stretch out the scholarships, be able to help more students with scholarship funds. Not all of them are like that. There are some. And then this is what I was really talking about. Even if you're not eligible for the Pell Grant, which is huge, but it isn't the end all be all. It really isn't. You may need a loan throughout the year. We would like to try to maybe not have to do that. Yes, we want to go the no loan way. But there are some students that's the situation that they're in. Maybe circumstances changed. Students, as much as we try and as much as it's out there, there are students or their parents, let's just say that, the FAFSA information has a lot of financial, or the FAFSA has a lot of financial information on it. And it's kind of, that information is from a place in time, but things can change, especially now with the pandemic. A lot of jobs were lost, hours were cut back, things like that. There is maybe a family filled out, maybe Joe's family filled out the FAFSA, wasn't eligible for Pell last year. So they decided, not even going to bother this year. And so Joe, no FAFSA. But then his dad loses his job. And then he finds out, oh, hey, if you report it to a financial aid office, they could possibly adjust to reflect kind of the current situation, not the situation when you would have filed the FAFSA. And then, we could see if you could be eligible for Pell or other types of financial aid that wouldn't be a loan. But if Joe hasn't already completed the FAFSA, then he's got to start all the way at the beginning, probably in a really stressful time. So we are really on a kick to get all students to complete the FAFSA. Because you never know. What's that?
By what date? By what date?
October.
Every October 1?
Sure. That's when it becomes available. The sooner the better.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. And what is
and then sometimes
that's for the upcoming academic year. So for instance, this next October, that would be for the following, that would
Summer.
be for the spring or for the following fall?
For the following summer.
For the following summer. Okay. All right. Great.
Yep. For financial aid purposes, summer is the first term. Summer is the first semester in the financial aid award year. So the FAFSA that became available on October 1st, 2020 is the FAFSA that we will start using for summer 2021 and then so on.
Okay. And for the summer session, if somebody did not fill it out in October, how late can they go?
January 30th.
January, really?
June 30th. I'm sorry. Yeah,
Okay.
June 30th.
All right.
Yeah. For some kind of aid, some aid will be too late for that. So, and that third bullet, this is the one that I was really talking about with scholarships. Sometimes we use FAFSA information to find students eligible for certain awards. So I literally just did this last week. We have a scholarship that I've got spots for 3 students in the spring semester, but they have to meet this is a state scholarship. So they really have to meet very specific criteria. So I worked with the offices, on campus it's very, looks like I didn't finish my thought here on this next one. It just caught my eye. But so anyway, I have this query and, I filter out all of these different things. I find the right majors. And then I send it off to a person who's working with those types of students. And I said, would you like to reach out to these students to see, if they are interested in applying for this scholarship? And the woman's like, yes. She called them. She had a script. She talked to a few. She emailed because some phone numbers weren't working. So there were 6 students. There's 3 scholarships. For the students that she couldn't reach by phone because they didn't have a phone number, guess what's probably not going to happen? They're probably not going to know that they could have been eligible for this award. So again, so important for students to keep their information updated. You might not think it, but this is the perfect example. If we can't reach you to tell you about a scholarship opportunity, you could be missing out on real dollars. And then
That's what I'd like to do on the podcast. Just that alone, really hammer that home, update your information. I think that would be really helpful to students.
Yep, that's very, very important. And then the last one, obviously I didn't finish my thought, but federal work study saves the college money. And then I was going to put, so funds can be put to, maybe that's why, because I got stuck on the words, but so, and I've got another, one of our other sessions this month, I believe, is one on federal work study and student employment. And so I will be going more into detail on that. But the only difference, let me rephrase that. The main difference between students who are paid on a departmental budget, who are eligible for student employment at the college, which has been changing because of IRS regulations and things like that, and students who are employed at the college through the federal work study program, is that The U.S. Department of Education pays 100% of those federal work-study wages. Guess who pays 100% of the departmental student wages? The college. And so if we had students that would just fill out a FAFSA and would happen to be eligible for federal work-study, that frees up, yes, maybe the department has budget for that, but that money could be freed up for technology, other things that they've been putting off, just other things that department could use and could really save the college in the end run. So this is kind of a we're revamping the student employment process because some things have been changed. That's why I asked Soraya if one of these sessions could be very specifically on student employment and federal work study, because there's a lot of misinformation out there. But it's so important because right now we're getting students that, well, I don't get a Pell Grant and I just want to work on campus, so I'm not going to fill out the FAFSA. And we're like, please fill out the FAFSA. Because even if you don't get a Pell Grant, you could be eligible for federal work study, which would be better for the college. Because another thing, just to give you guys kind of a peek behind the curtain, the Department of Education every year allocates how much money we get in these campus-based programs. One is SEOG, which we always spend all of that money, always, because it's grant. Obviously we're not letting that go. And federal work study. This year, 2021 has been 2020, 2021. So this aid year has been really difficult because we don't have a whole lot of students working. Part of it's because maybe not some areas aren't open, or maybe students, they've got, they're living with parents, or they themselves have, are high risk and they just don't want to be around people, even though the college has so many great protocols in place. Some people are still scared. So we're not spending even half of our allocation for this year on federal work study. We've we usually spend at least half. We usually spend more than that, but we're not spending all of the federal work study dollars that the government gives us. So guess what's happening? They're not giving us as much. So literally on Friday, I got the new allocation for 21-22. Granted, it's tentative, but it is $30,000 less than what we have for federal work study right now, which is $15,000 less than what we had the year before. And one of the big reasons is because we're not using it. So if we continue down this path of not using federal work study dollars, they're going to keep chipping away at the money we have available for that program. We don't want to see that happen. So the college, I'm on this kick. And again, I have all of these soapboxes and Janet, this is welcome to what my mind looks like. I'm a web browser with like 80 million tabs open. But this one is really near and dear to my heart because I am literally seeing the decline in the allocation that we get in these programs from the government. And I want us to turn that around. When I was at PW, we were very close to whittling the allocation away because because the college wasn't using it. There was no priority set to hire federal work study students. Now keep in mind, the federal work study program is designed to help students with the greatest need. So for those departments that are like, oh, we're just going to hire these students, it doesn't matter what their need is. There could be a student with great need who needs a job, but you've now filled that position with somebody who doesn't have that need. Doesn't mean that they don't still need the money. It's just, this is called demonstrated need. We really want, obviously, one of the sole purposes of the financial aid office is to help students get money to pay for their education. And the federal work study program is one program that the government literally gives us money to give away. Granted, students have to work. It's one of those self-help. I was going down that self-help aisle and wow, we just really got kind of distracted from that. But loans are self-help aid. Federal work study is too. There has to be an exchange of hours and the student gets a paycheck. But it's really, really important that the college kind of reevaluates its position on federal work study because, it could go away. It could go away. So I just have, this is my second to last one because the last one just has the thank you on it. Scholarships, reminder to check the website once a month for new opportunities. The first one is directly to scholarships for all students, but for university partnership students, there are scholarships that are very specific for you. However, university partnership students, if there is a scholarship on the non-UP page, you can apply for those. But non-UP students can't apply for scholarships that very specifically are for UP students. And we just have those pulled out so that students know. And again, most of those scholarships are through the foundation. Some of those scholarships get 0 applications. The application deadline was January 6th for most of them, so that has passed. The scholarship deadline for the fall semester will be, we were talking about changing it so that we can get scholarships, so that we can notify students that they're eligible for scholarships sooner than the first day of classes, which is a goal of ours. It's nice to know what you're eligible for. But yeah, those were just the preset slides. Does anybody have questions about those, or Zerai, with the time we have remaining, do we want to get to some of the questions that you had pre-established too? I know it's a lot of information. I'll be here the next 3 weeks. We can cover it again.
No, you've done a very good job, and you've covered a lot of the questions I already had.
Good.
And some of them you'll answer in the following workshops because they have to do with FAFSA and what does it have to do with financial aid and things like that. But I wanted to ask, just for a quick review, the difference between grants and loans again, just to give it a quick review as the session comes to an end. And how does the Student Financial Aid Office contact students? The primary one. So
Sure.
those 2 questions,
Okay.
and we finish.
Okay, so grants are free money, and for the most part, there are some situations, but we don't necessarily want to get into those. But for the most part, you get it, and you get to, they get applied to your account, and if it's more than what your bill is, then you get to walk away with the funds. So it really is free money. Yes, you still have to attend your classes. Your attendance has to be reported. You don't want to change your enrollment, things like that. But it's free money. Mostly comes from government sources, so either the federal government or the state government. Loans, there's a couple different types of loan programs, but let's talk about federal student loans. Those are low interest, guaranteed loans that students can get, as long as they're at least half time, to help with education-related expenses. A really good, or living expenses too. So when I went off to grad school, I had when I went to Kent, got my master's at Kent, I had an assistantship that paid my tuition, which was great because I was out of state and it was really, really expensive for grad classes. And I couldn't have a job because I was grad school, and I had to do my hours at my assistantship. So I had to take out federal student loans to pay my rent. It was something that I had to do, and I wouldn't be here today if I didn't have grad school. So it obviously set me up, so that's why I say loans aren't all terrible. Sometimes they are a means to an end, as long as you go about them smartly and have a plan for repayment. But there's a couple different things about loans that you need to know. The ones you got to fill out the FAFSA for these federal student loans. We have 2 different kinds. There's subsidized, which means the Department of Education pays the interest while you're in school, at least 6 credits. They pay the interest throughout the rest of your undergrad degree. They pay the interest, you have to fill out forms to do it, but they continue to pay the interest throughout graduate school. And 6 months after you graduate or stop attending, you kind of get this grace period where the interest accumulates, but the government pays it. So people are like, oh, it's interest free. It's there, but it's being paid. That's what the word subsidized means. It's being subsidized. It's being paid for by the government. I mean, that's it for this situation. That's what that word means. The way that you qualify for a subsidized loan is it's need-based. So just like, Federal Work Study, which is a need-based program, the FAFSA uses information. We compare it with other awards, grants, things that students might be receiving to determine if they're eligible for this subsidized loan. And if they're not, then they're eligible for an unsubsidized loan. Unsubsidized loan, again, interest accumulates, but now the student's responsible for paying that interest. Students have the option to defer that interest to when they make, when they get into repayment, when they start paying it back, or a good idea, if it's manageable, is I would suggest paying the interest as you go because interest, you're just paying. Everybody hopefully knows. If not, we'll have a session on it for Financial Literacy Month, because we have a session on loans in Financial Wellness Month for those sessions. But interest, if you're not paying on loans now, interest, it kind of compounds, which means you're paying the loan, but then you have interest, and then you're paying on the interest and the loan, and then more interest on the loan, and more interest in the loan. And if there was any kind of finance person on this on this session, they would probably be like, that's not the best way to explain it. But I think it makes sense, hopefully, they would be like, no. But for our purposes today, I think that works out really well. The way that we do loans at the college is changing. We are going to pay more attention to not to be restrictive of the loans, but just to help students keep their loan borrowing to a minimum for a number of different reasons, mostly because we don't want to see students get into these situations where and I've seen it. There is a student at BW who hit her maximum loan rate, there's an aggregate limit. So the government says you can only get so much loan for an undergrad degree. You can only get so much loan for your undergraduate plus graduate degree. And that, I just lost what the number was. I can't remember because I haven't dealt with graduate students now for almost 2 years. So, but I did for 15. So you think I'd remember that. Let's just say that the aggregate loan limit for a graduate student is $160,000, and it is over $100,000. It's a lot. But there was a student that we were working with at BW who hit that limit and still didn't have a master's degree. So she had $160,000 of debt and didn't have a master's degree. At Akron, we had a student, the limit for an undergraduate student, independent student. So if I were going to go back and get that story, but if you had a 26-year-old working on their undergraduate degree, their bachelor's degree, that limit is $57,500. She hit the limit before she had a bachelor's degree. That's a hole that we don't want anybody to be in. That's huge, because especially if the major is one where it might not be as financially beneficial. We all want to follow our passions, right? But there are majors that are going to pay quicker than others. And so, we don't want to see students getting close to those limits. We're never going to see the grad one because we don't offer grad programs, but we don't want to see that happen. And thankfully at our school, the amount of loan volume that we process isn't a lot, comparatively speaking, which is great. I think that speaks volumes to the way that we use resources and things like that. But we still do have students that borrow. The thing that could happen if we don't help students understand what a loan is, when they take it out, that it has to be repaid. That's why it's self-help. There's something, remember that tit for tat kind of with federal work study. You have to work hours, and in return, you get a paycheck. With a loan, you borrow it, but eventually you're going to have to pay it back, plus interest. But the thing that happens is the government keeps track of students that schools give loans to and how well those students repay those loans. And if they don't repay them and they don't have something set up like an in-school deferment, which is, if you go on to grad school, you have your loans deferred until you graduate. If they default on those loans, that could very well hurt colleges' abilities to give any kind of financial aid, including the Pell Grant, to future students. So it really behooves financial aid offices to bring to colleges, and Zariah, I know you're on completion council, so in March, we're going to be having a great old session about this, and you're going to be like, I know this already, but it really behooves everybody on campus to help students realize the value of completing a degree, because we don't want any student to leave the college in loan debt and not have a certificate or a degree, and without plans to go out and enter the workforce or work towards additional any kind of education or qualifications or what's the word I'm looking for? Job training, vocational training, whatever. Once you reach a certain percentage of students who are defaulting on their loans, and it's within your cohort. So our cohort is all of Ohio's community colleges, all of Ohio's 2-year schools, even though, yes, we do have a 4-year program, but that's our cohort. Once you reach a certain percentage, you kind of get a little slap on the wrist. You can't do certain things with federal government funds that normally you could do. You could get to the point where they're like, no loans for you at all, period. Now imagine, remember, not all students borrow loans for nefarious purposes. Some borrow to actually pay their bill or to pay their rent while they're finishing their program so that they can turn around and, so they can be full-time, so that they can turn around and enter the workforce sooner. Some schools reach a level where the default rate is so high, you don't even get the Pell Grant. And so we never, ever, 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 ever want that to happen. We don't want any of those stages to happen at LCCC. And we're actually pretty good. We're not the lowest in the state, but we're pretty low. And considering that we do actually hire a company to help us, work with our students who are in repayment. Right now, like there's no action because everything's been put on pause. The Biden administration pushed, any kind of loan repayment back to September. It was December, and then it was January, and now it's September. So there's no action happening. But as soon as that relief is lifted, so come October 1st, we're going to have all of these students who are in repayment, and some of them can't find jobs. So it's everybody's problem at a college. It's everybody's problem. But that's why, it's our job to educate. That's why we're going to Completion Council, to make everybody realize how important this is. But that's why we want to completely relook, and I say completely, that's why we want to relook at how we're awarding loans to help students make these decisions smarter, to, kind of curb some borrowing that may not be for educational purposes. So I know that's a loaded question. And it's probably more about loans than you wanted to know, but I felt since we were here that we might as well touch on it.
Carrie, is there a possibility that I could interview you for the podcast?
I would love it, Janet. I would love to be, a partner with you, with all of, yes.
Okay.
Yes, please.
So what's the best way? Email?
Yeah. And so on the next screen, let me just pop that up. Okay. So I just wanted to thank everybody. I know we didn't have a whole lot of students, but you students who are here, if you attend the next 3, you get to go into that drawing for a $250 certificate to the bookstore, which is huge. So bring your A game. The next 2 are going to be kind of like this. The last one's going to be like a Jeopardy game. So, and there's prizes for that too. So
I want to advertise that on the podcast for the next one.
Yeah.
Can you do that? That would be cool.
Yeah. Janet, shoot me an email and we'll connect on all of this stuff. But yeah, I would definitely love to be a partner with you with that. I would love for us to have our, financial wellness cute logo and word, but I'm not sure when that's coming, but we'll do this regardless. But yeah, I really look forward to these sessions, and I'm so very thankful to Soraya and the entire Student Senate for allowing me this time to just, wax poetic sometimes about a lot of the stuff. I think you can probably tell I'm very passionate about all of it. I'm usually pretty much passionate about a lot of stuff.
Well,
I'm definitely in the right field. As you can see, it took me a long time to find financial aid, but
money is a very emotional subject.
Mm-hmm.
It is.
It absolutely is. So we are at the 1:30 mark. And we have to close. I know we can talk about this forever, but we do have to close. So I have a few closing remarks. So I surely hope you have all benefited from today's forum, and encourage all attendees to fill out the feedback form. I'll get that to you in a moment. I wanted to thank Carrie Short and Valerie and everybody else who's attended for doing this event with us, and I thank the students that joined us today. It was a pleasure hosting this event and providing the space for you to ask your questions and become familiar with our Student Financial Aid Office and staff, of course, and hope that you will visit their office and make use of their resources. Also remember that our first general meeting is this Friday, Friday the 29th. There we go. From 3 to 4 p.m. And remember to register for our upcoming February financial aid events. If you attend all 4 events, just like Carrie mentioned, you will be entered in a chance to win a $200 gift certificate to the bookstore, and you will win prizes at the end of the month at the game day. So once again, I hope I see all of you in the next events, and thank you again for joining us. I have put in the link for the registration form for the other events in the chat, and I'm going to put in the link for the feedback form in just a moment. But thank you so much for all of this. You guys did great.
And don't forget, if questions come up in the meantime, just feel free to email me or the general financial aid email address. We're always here for you, not just when we get this open forum type of environment. So we live for you guys. We really do.
Yes, absolutely. So I have sent the feedback form, the link to the feedback form. Everyone who's in attendance can fill that out. That is how we collect the questions for future forums, and it best helps us collect what social media and way of communication you prefer. So fill that out, grab it, and Carrie, if you can send me the presentation so I can forward it to everybody else as well, that would be great. And I'll let you know what happens with the recording, because for right now it's just for taking notes in the future. Okay.
All right, I'll fix that. I need to finish my thought on the federal work study thing, and then I'll send that.
Okay, works for me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good day, everyone.